This conference will now be recorded.
Director Deere, are we ready?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Welcome to the West Basin Municipal Water District Water Policy and Legislation Committee, a special meeting of the Board of Directors for November 16th. Calling this meeting to order. Julie, can you scroll up, please? We do have a quorum, and now it's time for public comment. Anyone from the public who would wish to speak?
Madam Chair, we haven't received any requests for a public comment, but we do have at least one member of the public here. If somebody would like to speak, please let us know now.
Mr. Caldwell, would you like to speak? I think you're the only one I see online from the public.
Thank you for asking. No, I have no comments to share, but I appreciate if they asked.
Thank you very much. The next item is presentations. This is Interim General Manager. Do we have any presentations?
Madam Chair, we have no presentations today.
Okay, item 5, action calendar. Mr. Interim General Manager, please proceed.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm very excited about this item. Our first action item today, our only action item, is item 5A. The intent is to request that the board adopt a resolution number 11-21-1142, authorizing the application for grant funding to the United States Bureau of Reclamation for the Water and Energy Efficiency Grant Solicitation. And for this item, we do have Tammy Hurley, our Water Policy and Resources Analyst, for the presentation.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, Chair Gray and members of the board. So this item is being brought to you today in order to provide information, as EJ said, on a potential grant funding opportunity, and then to request your consideration of adopting a resolution to authorize submittal of the grant application. So I'd like to say big thank you to our team members, Gus Meza and Jennifer Vasquez. We worked together to put together this information, to identify a potential project. And, there's a lot of good water savings potential that could happen if this project were, to come to fruition. So on November 1st, West Basin staff submitted a grant application to Reclamation, the Bureau of Reclamation, to request $385,000 of funding assistance towards implementation of the proposed project. So if awarded funding from Reclamation, the district will be able to add an additional $1 to the existing $2 incentive for each square foot of grass removed through a partnership that we already have with the Metropolitan Water District. And another element of the program would include hiring a landscape consultant to assist with designing the low water use landscapes that utilize the district's ocean-friendly watershed principles. And also staff would develop an effective branding and messaging component to motivate the public to participate in the program. And we would do this largely in part with our public information department. Collateral materials would also be developed in both English and Spanish to include some specific messaging to target the removal of non-functional turf. So in an effort to increase water efficiency and assist the district service area in meeting long-term conservation goals, we've identified the program designed exclusively to remove non-functional grass that is located in areas for aesthetic use as opposed to human recreational purposes or other critical business operations. So this project would be designed to remove approximately 300 square feet of grass throughout the service area, and it would have a projected water savings of 1,215 acre feet over the useful life of the project. So included in this report as attachment A is a copy of the resolution, which is on page 6 of the committee packet. And as I mentioned earlier, we're requesting $385,000. Regarding the fiscal impact of the program, the district's cost share would be $160,341.60. This amount would be included in the Water Policy and Resources Development budget for 2 fiscal years ending 23, and 24. And the third-party contributions, these include Metropolitan's grass replacement incentive program that provide $2 per square foot. So, and if we were awarded the grant program, we would plan to implement the program by coordinating with the South Bay Environmental Services Center, all of our water retailers, our cities, and our stakeholders. So the grant requires a board resolution to support the application, authorizes the general manager to accept funding, recognizes that the district has the capability to provide the amount of cost share funding, and authorizes the general manager to enter into contracts if selected for funding. So I'll read the recommended motion, but if there are any questions, please let me know. And for the committee consideration, the recommended motion is that the board approve resolution number 11-21-1142, a resolution of the Board of Directors of West Basin Municipal Water District authorizing the application for grant funding to the United States Bureau of Reclamation. And that concludes my report. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Tammy, thank you very much for the report. And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to add that obviously through the leadership of our Board of Directors, West Basin has been funding grass replacement rebates for the past 2 years. We've also been working with Metropolitan Water District as far as partnering with their program. West Basin did have a previous grant where we were able to, again, authorize an extra $1 per square foot in West Basin service area previously. And then, of course, as you know, we've been continuing to work with all of our retailers as far as this rebate goes. So the fiscal impact would be no different than we would typically anticipate in future years for the budget. So I wanted to point that out because our cost share, when you look at the total dollar amount, does look somewhat significant, but it's actually less than we've been dedicating to this effort the past 2 years.
Okay, thank you, EJ, and thank you very much, Tammy, for the presentation. And I want to commend staff for pursuing the grant. It's good news, I think, to the agency, and the fact that you are pursuing the grant for water conservation. Thank you to Gus and Jennifer for their efforts also. So with that, Director Deere, did you have any comments? And then I'll ask the other board members.
No, I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, okay. President Williams, did you have any comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just a minor, very minor thing here is that when staff is delivering their recommendation, I don't think it's proper for them to say that they're making a recommended motion. It should just be a recommendation. Just a minor thing.
Duly noted, President Williams.
EJ, is that new language?
In the board memo, it is correctly stated, as President Williams says, that there is a recommendation that the board adopt the resolution.
Okay, you got to muffle with your, I know you have to wear your mask, but you're a little muffled.
I apologize. I think that was just staff's verbiage. We will review that and make sure that we're sticking to the recommended motion, or the recommendation that the adopt the resolution.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, EJ. Mr. Falwell. Director Houston.
Sure, thank you. I do have a couple questions. I think the first one was, how soon would we potentially be awarded the grant if we do get this grant?
So they anticipate making their announcements in the spring of 2022.
Okay, so not till obviously next year, calendar year. Okay, and then assuming we get this grant, I mean, that's another, how are we going to implement that? Is it like another $1 on top of whatever we're already doing, or how do we implement this? And it's over multiple years, right?
Correct. It would be for 2 years. That would be the life of the program for 2 years to implement the program. And it would be to add an additional $1 on top of what we already are promoting for our incentive. So we would be also including a design assistance program. So for entities that, say, oh, I have something that, we could convert and remove all this grass because it's really used for, aesthetics, but I don't know where to begin or what to do. So we do have a component of that. So we would like to really give people all of the resources that are necessary to help, get them, on a fast track to do this. And yeah, we would be promoting this, again, with our public information department, developing flyers, creating collateral. We would be reaching out to all of our cities, city managers to let them know of all these programs, of course, with our retail agencies, and just, trying to spread the word. And of course, hopefully we'll get some good feedback and see a lot of activity with this.
And Director Houston, I just want to make sure that we're very clear. The way that the grant was written, and if you review, I think it's the third paragraph of the background on packet page 3, the base model that we utilize for our grass replacement rebate is to add money to nets. So we augment nets rebate. In this case, we would actually be getting funding from the Bureau in order to apply additional funds to theirs. But then, of course, the West Basin Board of Directors has in the past considered additional funds and actually increased that dollar amount. So this would be a budget decision for the Board of Directors in future years. We would obviously include our cost share as the grant, so we would be a minimum of $3. But if we continue to fund it as we have in the past, it could be as high as $4 and possibly even more than that. And of course, as you know, West Basin does have different dollar amounts in different parts of our service area now for the disadvantaged communities, as well as other portions that are partially grant funded. So it would still vary, but we would have the board would have control over that.
Okay, perfect. I think that answered my question. Yeah, that you would have that extra dollar that could be up to 3 or 4 or more in certain areas, but this is coming potentially through a grant. So that sounds like a great option for us. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. I do have a question that Director Houston asked. When would I think the grant be? When would the decision be made for who will win the grant? So my question is, if we are lucky enough, fortunate enough to be awarded the grant, when will the actual dollars be awarded to the agency?
So if we were given the green light to go ahead and proceed with this in the spring of 2022, that would allow us to start the program effective July 1st, 2022. So effective at the new fiscal year and continue for the next 2 years.
All right, thank you, Tammy. All right, and no other questions. We'll move to the next item, item 6. Director, are you okay to move this forward to the board for approval, consideration of approval?
Yes, I think we should.
All right, we will move it forward with a recommendation for approval. Item 6, information calendar.
Yes, Madam Chair. Item 6A that we have before you is the Metropolitan Water District monthly report. And again, for this item, we do have Tammy Hurley-High, our water policy analyst, for the presentation.
All right, thank you, Jay. Okay, so this information brought to you today, update on Metropolitan programs. And I will provide information on activities and the recent actions and different areas of program interest, and then conclude with a brief summary of current water supply conditions. So first, on the regional recycled water program, the Metropolitan Board, they approved a partnership with the Central Arizona Project and the Arizona Department of Water Resources that will provide funding towards environmental planning of the regional recycled water project. And through this partnership agreement, $6 million will be contributed, which includes $5 million from the Central Arizona Project and $1 million from their Department of Water Resources, the state of Arizona. Metropolitan also has an agreement with the Southern Nevada Water Authority that was approved back in December 2020. And the Southern Nevada Water Authority has agreed to contribute up to $6 million. So in total, these funding contributions would contribute up to $12 million collectively. And the environmental planning for the regional recycled water project will take approximately 3 years to complete and is estimated to cost at approximately $30 million. So with the drought contingency plan set to expire in 2026 under the Colorado River Operating Guidelines, these partnerships will help strengthen the value of future collaborative efforts among the 3 lower basin states of the Colorado River as they begin working together to discuss new operating guidelines as they've already started. So next, the statement of commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This, there is an attachment here with the board memo, a copy of the board statement. It's located on page 8 of the committee packet. This was a follow-up item to the discussion on expanding diversity, equity, and inclusion that we also refer to as DE&I during the board retreat in September. So the statement on DE&I demonstrates the board's pledge to create the highest standards at all levels. The Metropolitan Board is interested in focusing on building an environment where all employees feel safe and supports a zero-tolerance policy for all forms of harassment, retaliation, and intimidation. The statement will serve as a commitment to provide staff with guidance and support in order to develop and implement policies and programs to make diversity, equity, and inclusion a priority. So next, moving on to the regional drought emergency summary. So on November 9th, the board declared a drought emergency. And this calls for increased effort to conserve water, especially in the areas that have limited supplies. This drought emergency is necessary as the state continues to experience unprecedented drought conditions. This results from the governor's response along with the state's and increasing action to the drought. And as you know, Metropolitan has already initiated numerous drought actions earlier this year. So this resolution calls upon member agencies to take all responsible measures to reduce their dependency on state water projects, water supplies, and to implement any appropriate voluntary and mandatory drought actions from the water shortage contingency plans. These actions will help Metropolitan to preserve regional storage and to reduce the use of state water project supplies. Another highlight from last month's activities, the California Natural Resources Secretary, Wade Crowfoot, addressed the Metropolitan Board of Directors at their executive committee. And Secretary Crowfoot addressed the state's drought emergency and the need for water agencies across the state to work together to increase water conservation and consider other actions. He also complimented Metropolitan for diversifying regional water supplies and managing programs that have reduced water use and gallons per capita per day. The Secretary echoed the governor's call for all water agencies to activate their local water shortage contingency plans, and he stated the importance for local agencies to lead the way in this effort due to the severe drought conditions. So looking ahead, the Department of Water Resources is planning for the worst case scenario should these extreme dry conditions persist throughout 2022. And DWR is preparing to announce their first allocation of state water project supplies by December 1st for the new water year. And that will be a 0% allocation for all state water project contractors. So in light of the worsening drought conditions and the continued need to elevate water conservation efforts, Metropolitan has also approved expanding water conservation programs that include offering new rebates to promote water savings in homes and businesses. This will include additional funding for turf removal programs, modifications to member agency funding program, a direct install program, and new incentive for leak detections. Some more information on these programs and West Basin's involvement with these programs will be brought to the committee next month. So with respect to board meeting actions, we have a couple of attachments with the memo that includes items that were heard last month in November, a summary of the board member vote, and then the draft list of items that were brought to the board in November. So moving on, just a brief update on the water supply conditions. Included in this report under attachment E, a graphic that depicts the current water supply conditions. This is page 19 of the packet. And the majority of the rain and storm conditions occurred during the last week of October. But on the first page, it highlights the two major watersheds, California State Water Project and for the Colorado River Basin. And in the middle of the page, there's a chart titled the Metropolitan storage levels, and which depicts how much water is available in Metropolitan storage reserves. And for the State Water Project, we have entered into a new water year. The state reservoirs are at historic lows. However, so far, the rainy season has provided much needed precipitation. The northern areas in San Francisco and Sacramento have recorded above average rainfall. And in October, more than 12 inches of rain was recorded on the northern Sierra Nevada mountains. And as a result, Lake Oroville has seen improvement in their reservoirs. This graphic was completed prior to the recent storms that occurred. The bulk of it was the last month of October. And then, yeah, on the second page, that shows the storage reservoirs or the storage reserves for the State Water Project in the Colorado River. And again, the storm that came over in Northern California came right over Lake Oroville, and it really helped the water supply in that area. And conditions along the Colorado River. So looking at the bottom right corner at Lake Mead, the water currently at 1,066 feet in elevation. The lake's elevation is forecasted to be 1,068 feet at the end of this calendar year. So in summary, there has been a strong start to the new water year. Precipitation in the upper Colorado River Basin measured slightly above the amount typically received for October. And in California, the Northern Sierra 8-station precipitation index accumulated nearly 4 times the typical amount for the entire month of October. So that concludes this report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tammy. Are there any questions, Director Deere?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. President Williams? I think you. All right, Director Houston?
No, thank you.
Right. Director Williams, do you have questions? Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the next item.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. The last of our information items is item 6B. This is our legislative update, and for this report, I'll be providing the state legislative update, and I'll have Matthew Zurlo provide the federal affairs. The state affairs actually begins on packet page 23, and it's very brief this month. Obviously, this is an overview of October activities. We always want to bring it to you, but October is kind of a slow month as far as tracking kind of legislative items as people are beginning to work on their legislative proposals. But obviously wanted to highlight as part of the drought update that Tammy just mentioned, back on October 19th, Governor Newsom officially expanded the drought emergency declaration to include the entire state, of which I think most people were paying close attention to Southern California. So obviously that does impact West Basin Municipal Water District. His request for a 15% voluntary reduction is something that West Basin takes very seriously. And as part of this proclamation, he directed all local water suppliers to implement their urban water shortage contingency plans. As you recall, the West Basin Board of Directors did enter into stage 1 of our water shortage contingency plan, and we are bringing an item per our last Public Information and Education Committee to the full board to consider possibly stepping into a stage 2 and or a stage 3 of that plan. The other item I wanted to highlight is at the bottom of packet page 23, as well as the top there of packet page 24. Obviously, the California State Legislature took a very proactive approach as far as water infrastructure funding with a looming drought, and now we see where we are. The California State Assembly and Senate took a very swift action as far as providing funding for drought relief in a specific grant funding program. And as you might recall, in their original solicitation for eligible projects, they did limit that the scope of those projects to really include water quality issues and safe, affordable drinking water, and really kind of identify portions of the state of California where they would invest those funds. Metropolitan Water District took a very active leadership role as far as requesting the state to broaden that up. Myself, as well as several other general managers, did submit letters to our California agencies, including the Department of Water Resources, asking them or requesting that they include demand management programs. And that obviously will include water use efficiency, water recycling, and the such. And I am very pleased to report that the Department of Water Resources did grant that request made by several agencies throughout the state of California. And so demand management is now an eligible program within this effort. So with that, we do have a list of the priority legislation included in the board packet. This is something that we're continuing to track because we recognize that a lot of these efforts did not pass last year. So we're keeping an eye out for potential stakeholders to work on these concepts. But with that, that kind of summarizes, I think, the state legislative activities. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I can also throw it over to Matt Day.
Okay, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'll go ahead and continue with the federal affairs update, if that's all right. I am on packet page 27. So to start off, some major legislation was passed yesterday. So yesterday, President Biden signed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Package legislation that's known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This was the major legislation that's kind of been in the works for the last 4 to 6 months. Back in August, the Senate had passed their version of it. And then last week or the week before, the House followed that up by passing their version, sent it to the president, and he signed it into law yesterday. So this is a major feat for the country. It's the largest infrastructure bill, being touted as the largest infrastructure bill in decades. And I know we've provided a summary on it before, but just to recap, it's $1.2 trillion total in spending, with $550 billion in new investments that will take place over a 5-year period for water projects, roads, bridges, mass and public transit, rail, airports, ports, and waterways. More specific to the water industry, because it funds a lot of things, as you can imagine, is there's $55 billion that will go to the EPA for clean water and drinking water programs through their state revolving fund. Allows us to apply for grants or low interest loan funding. There's $8.3 billion for Western water infrastructure programs. That includes $550 million for Title 16 recycling projects, $450 million for large scale recycling projects, $300 million for Lower Colorado River drought contingency plan activities, $400 million for Water Smart grants through Bureau of Reclamation. Those are grants that we've applied for, currently applying for as well, and then $250 million for desalination activities. In addition to those funding measures, it also provides $200 million for the Army Corps' Environmental Infrastructure Account. This, of course, funds our Harbor South Bay recycled water projects, and that would be the funding vehicle that we would use to go after some additional funding through our work plan. So West Basin is in the process of submitting funding requests to the Army Corps this year for through the work plan for a groundwater augmentation project. I believe I reported on this briefly last month, but I wanted to just reiterate that we are currently working together with the Water Replenishment District to jointly advocate for funding for their brackish desal, which they're doing through the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. And then also at the same time, we'll be applying for funds for our groundwater augmentation through the Army Corps. So West Basin, WRD, and both of our lobbyists met last month to begin talking about our advocacy strategy going forward. And we're going to continue to have conversations with them going forward so that we can go after funding for that joint project. Now, in addition to the major bipartisan infrastructure package, there's companion legislation that's known as the Build Back Better Act. This is the social infrastructure package that's currently estimated at about $1.75 trillion. That was reduced down from more than double that, about 3.5 trillion originally. And that's something that they are looking to get passed here hopefully pretty soon. Right now, they're waiting on the Congressional Budget Office to provide a final cost estimate for the bill that's expected by the end of this week. And this is the legislation that, in addition to all of the safety net type programs for schools, those types of things, there's additional water program provisions within the bill that includes funding for disadvantaged communities, additional money for recycling projects, ratepayer assistance, and other infrastructure repairs and upgrades. It's expected that the House could try to pass the first version of it by Thanksgiving, so by the end of next week. It would then go to the Senate for any updates or changes to the bill. And if there are any changes, they would have to go back to the House for concurrence. And so I think best case scenario is we're probably looking at Christmas before everything will be finalized and voted on and approved and passed to the president. So, but it could go beyond the new year as well. It's certainly a possibility. The government is currently funded through early December. As you might remember, Congress had passed a continuing resolution in the last couple of months. So they have until December 3rd to pass the fiscal year 22 spending bills to avoid a government shutdown. So it's widely expected that another continuing resolution and increase to the debt limit will be needed by early December. And that'll kind of go along with hopes that the appropriations bills will be passed before Christmas. It could be a short-term continuing resolution. It's also starting to be talked about that there could be a longer one that would need to fund the government through February or March. This is important to West Basin because we do have funding that's been called out in the FY22 Energy and Water Spending Bill, $3.8 million for our Harbor South Bay projects in North Gardena and Memorial Mills Park in Carson. So we continue to see how this plays out. But right now there's two possible funding tracks that we are pursuing. There's the work plan, which will be our kind of our joint effort with WRD to go after funding for the groundwater augmentation, and then also the congressionally directed spending, aka the earmarks for the 3.8 million for our recycled water lateral projects. So that's kind of thing where things currently stand. That concludes my report, and I'm available to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions, board members? Okay, go on. Director Deere or anyone?
No, thank you.
Okay. I do have a question. The domestic agenda, which is the Build Back Better Act, right? That is not passed yet, right? They're going to consider that at another time.
That's yeah.
It's right. And you mentioned disadvantaged communities. Did I miss? I'm trying to find it out on the list that you included. That's part of that Build Back Better Act. Is that listed there?
I don't know if it's listed in there. I might have picked that up from another summary that I had read online, but I know that it is included heavily within the Build Back Better Act. Yeah.
Okay, and do you know exactly what that means? That portion of the bill? What does that mean? Do you know that, or if you can come back and kind of let us know?
Yeah, I can definitely let you know how that breakdown looks in terms of the funding, what it goes towards, because it would be pretty broad in scope for the different things that it would
Yeah.
fund. So I can definitely provide that.
Yeah. What I heard was that it was a much larger amount than actually what was funded. I think what I heard was maybe 1 billion, 1 million compared to 24 million, which was in the original bill. So I would like to know what that was and what it is now proposed now, and basically what does that cover for disadvantaged communities?
I'd be happy to provide that for you.
Thank you. All right, if nothing else, we go to the next item. Mr. Caldwell. Thank you, Matt, for your report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes our information calendar. We don't have any items in a closed session, item number 7.
Okay, then director's comments. Director Deere.
I just wanted to know when we could find out whether we could use our building for the Lions Club dinner and speech contest in January. We need some kind of a estimate of the cost, because there are going to be costs incurred this time. Is that correct? General Manager. Maybe.
Director, would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, I wanted to know if we the use of the Lions Club. We put that on an agenda for one of the meetings, maybe the board meeting, so we can get approval.
Happy to do that, and I will give you a call after this meeting to discuss as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Chairman Gray.
Thank you. President Williams.
Oh, no, thank you.
All right, Director Houston.
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to staff today for great reports. Certainly very exciting about the potential grant funding coming in. So thank you very much. I think Emmy and Matt were the one that gave reports today, but thank you to everyone. And so with that, Mr. Caldwell, do you have any comments at all?
No, I don't. Again, I think Tammy mentioned this. Just want to say thank you to the entire team. Putting a package together to submit these grants is not an easy task, and we're able to do it very quickly. So I want to say thank you to the entire team.
Thank you very much for acknowledging them, and we acknowledge them too. So thank you very much. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Madam Chair.